So, first question. Have the angels been around since the beginning? How were they brought into existence, and do they have a lifespan? It's a very good question.
I'll be receiving one. I'll organize the questions for you.
Yeah, but my memory sometimes messes up, you know? Yeah, okay. Yes, the angels have been around since the beginning, and no. Why do I say this? When we say beginning, we could mean beginning in two ways. We could mean beginning in terms of time, temporally speaking, okay? Or we could mean beginning in terms of having an origin which could be outside of time. Understand? Okay? In this physical world, for example, we have a certain type of time which is measured by what we call movement. Okay? In this world, we have a time that is measured by movement, which therefore requires space and objects. However, movement also is expressed in another way in this world. It means the movement from potential to actual. From potential to actual. For example, a seed growing into a tree is a kind of movement. From the seed being a potential tree to the tree being an actual tree. Or an embryo in the womb. It is, or even a blastocyte, the pre-embryo stage. This is moving in itself from the stage of a blastocyte to an embryo to a baby to a teenager to an adult to an old person, and then to transcend their physical selves to an entirely spiritual being. This is a kind of movement. And all of these things, this movement is what we call time. Okay? So time is not just outside of ourselves. Time is not just the movement of the hours and the days and so forth. Time is in us as well. Okay? So for example, if I leave my body and I go in the future in some kind of time capsule, I am still within time. Okay? My body has its own time. You see, because I'm still growing. If it took me 2 years to get to 200 years ago, in the future, for example, I would have aged 2 years. You see, so angels are not subject to this, because angels are outside of time. So angels then have no beginning from our perspective in this world, but from the perspective of the fact that they have a beginning. And also, angels don't move from potential to actual. Angels are in the alam al-amr, okay? They remain that way. Whatever they are that. They don't change, okay? But angels have an origin with respect to the fact that God created them, right? So they have a beginning from that point of view. What else? Would they die? You said was the question? Yes, angels will die. But angels don't die like, for example, we have in this world, okay? Angels die by the command of Allah. When the day of judgment comes, Allah will give the command and the angels will die. Outside of that, angels are eternal. I think that was the question, right? Yeah. You sure there wasn't a middle part up to that? Another question involved there? But this is the alam al-amr, okay? This is the realm where when Allah gives a command, it is. Yes. How were they brought into existence? They were brought into existence by the command of Allah. Whereas we are brought into existence by a process. Based upon this movement from potential to actual, we have the original creation, and then we have stages of cause and effect that lead to us coming into this world. Angels are not like that. Okay, next question.
We don't have a question right now.
I have one word.
Yes?
Sheikh, about those people who are converted or reverted toward Islam from their background religion.
Yes.
How do you advise them to take the knowledge? What type of knowledge that should be taken and have a priority in their build-up of their faith and iman and religion before they change their mind, for example? Within 1 minute.
Yeah, I mean, I think the most important thing is prayer. I think the most important activity is prayer. You know, prayer helps to increase your knowledge, helps you to get closer to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, you see. And the other part is seeking knowledge itself. You know, read books. I can't tell you exactly what to read because we have different capacities or, you know, different needs, you know, intellectual needs and so forth. But I think, when I became a Muslim, I was thirsty for books, you know. So I think read books. The other thing to do is to hang out with Muslims, really. You know, because Muslims in their practice, in their behavior and so on, good Muslims, of course, you know, influence you. Even, for people who are born Muslims, you know, getting together with good Muslims, good people who know more than you and so on, helps you to grow in your knowledge as well.
Sheikh, since you mentioned the prayer, regarding the
Congregational.
congregational prayer between men and women.
Yes.
You have any advice, Sheikh, regarding who stands where and how the influence?
Yeah. Well, I mean, let's start with this place, right? For example, we have men and women side by side with a barrier in between, okay? So one of the first things you should know is that you should not be ahead of the imam. In this case, the imam would be on the right side with the men, okay? You make sure that you're behind him, not in front of him. The second thing is to maintain a kind of continuity between the ranks. For example, if the men were in that room and women in this room, the women are not part of the congregation. There must be some kind of closeness behind the barrier. So, for example, you should have a woman close to the barrier and a man on the other side close to the barrier, so they form basically the same rank with this barrier in between. Thirdly, the barrier should be something temporary. It shouldn't be something permanent, like a wall. It shouldn't be like that at all. Something like this is quite fine. The fourth thing is you should not precede the imam in terms of the movement. You see, so when, for example, let's say the imam says Allahu Akbar and goes into ruku, right? You shouldn't go into ruku before him. That invalidates your participation in the congregation. Okay, it doesn't invalidate your prayer, but it makes your prayer an individual prayer. Okay, so you should, when he says Allahu Akbar, you pause just for a couple of seconds and then you go in. Because you can't see him, you pause for a couple of seconds and then you go in. The other thing is to try to keep the ranks as well. You don't have too many gaps in between. Especially if it is in a mosque. All right, especially if it's in a mosque, people whose prayers are shortened should not pray in the first rank, but they should pray in the ranks that come after. These are some of the basic rules. Again, another thing is, for example, if you are joining the prayer, okay, you should join the prayer before or during the rak'ah of that prayer. Okay, one of the rak'ahs of that prayer. If you join after that rak'ah is not counted. Okay, so for example, somebody they're praying and they're in ruku, right? I didn't say ruku. Did I say ruku? Yeah, and they're in ruku and you join at ruku and you follow after that with them. That rak'ah is counted as one. If you join after ruku, let's say you join and you make sajda with everybody else, it does not count as a rak'ah. Okay. And if you join, this is getting to be a fiqh class now. And if you join, let's say they finished one rak'ah or two rak'ah, for example. So you join in the second rak'ah, the third rak'ah, or the fourth rak'ah, or so on. That rak'ah is your first rak'ah. Okay? So if, for example, everybody sits at the end of their last sajda, sits to say tashahhud, and you are not at the point of tashahhud, you should kind of raise on your knees, put your hands on the floor like in a state of readiness, and wait for them to get up. Okay? When they get up, you get up with them, and you do your second rak'ah. Okay? And so you would end up praying a little longer than them because they will finish before you. I could only say it like this because we don't have much time. I think these are the major ones. Yeah.
One more thing. If I decide that I stop my prayer, I'm in the first row, and I stopped. My salat is battle, and I restarted my prayer alone. what happens to those who are joined after me?
If you're in the front row
Yes.
and you
I decide, for example, I'm praying مثلا Maghrib and Isha.
okay.
So I finished my Maghrib.
Right.
And took my time.
Yes.
Everyone stood up for the fourth rak'ah.
Yes.
While I'm still taking my time, probably looking left and right. Is that validates those who are after me?
No, it doesn't invalidate people behind you.
Okay.
Yeah, it might invalidate your prayer. I mean, if you, for example, in the middle of your prayer, you were looking around or something, it invalidates your prayer. So you shouldn't be looking to the left or the right or anything like that. Yeah. Yeah.
One last question.
Yes.
About joining salat
Yes.
during sujood or after sujood.
You can't join. You can, but it doesn't count as a rak'ah.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
you join them.
Yeah, you can join. Yeah.
So we'll consider as the first rak'ah for you.
But yeah. If you join, you could only join when you join that rak'ah is only counted as a rak'ah if you join at ruku or before ruku. Yeah. Yeah.
There's a question regarding Ashab al-Kahf.
Yes. In Ashab al-Kahf, this question is about whether they were awake or whether they were asleep, because the ayah mentions them as that they are asleep. This sleep is not a normal sleep, of course. Okay. For example, we have in science the idea of suspended animation, for example. Okay, suspended animation. Suspended animation. It's a topic of sci-fi movies, but it's a possibility, okay? Where, for example, a person's physical functions are in a kind of a stasis. So you don't get old or whatever like that. You know what I mean? You're in a kind of a stasis, okay? It's like you're sleeping, but you're not. So when you say Allah awakened them or resurrected them, in a sense, it's like resurrecting them from like a deep coma, in a sense. It's a very different type of a situation like that. So there's no contradiction here.
So there's a question here.
Why didn't the Imams after Imam Hussein alayhi salam rise up against the oppressors of their time like Imam Hussein alayhi salam did? Because they were commanded by Allah. That you have many hadith by the Imams alayhi salam that said that it was not there to rise up against oppressors. It's very prominent, for example, in the time of Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam, where you had people like Zayd, who rose up, and thought that you should. And Imam Ja'far as-Sadiq alayhi salam advised him that he shouldn't. This is the responsibility or the wadhifa of the 12th Imam. May Allah hasten his return. So they didn't have the permission, because the Imams, they rise up on the permission of God. They don't just rise up on themselves.
Okay. Sorry, can a good man or a woman
Who is not a Muslim go to heaven? Of course. Yeah. A good man or a good woman who is a believer would go to heaven. And sometimes you have some cases where they're not a believer that they go to heaven. Like, for example, Hatim Ta'i, for example. Yeah, there are many some hadith that say he went to heaven because he instituted a good sunnah among people. You see?
I have a question
Yes.
regarding that. Then what's the point of us propagating Islam?
Well, they're very...
They're going to heaven, we're going to heaven.
Yeah, well, they don't, first of all, such people are quite rare. Okay, they do exist, all right? And it does indicate that that person has some kind of internal, primordial spirituality in them. You have in the world many people who belong to other religions or who don't belong to any religion at all, not because of their choice, but because of the environment in which they live. You know what I mean? So if I was born in India, for example, okay, to Hindu parents, it's not my fault. I was Hindu, Allah doesn't judge them and say, well, you're not a Muslim, but you're not a card-carrying Muslim. Let me see your name. It's not Hussein or Hassan, but Patel or something like that. You go to hell. Allah is not like that. You see? But that doesn't mean to say that if we don't practice Islam, it wouldn't make any difference, or Islam is not important. No, it's important, you see. But you remember the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam says that there are two prophets, right? There's the internal prophet and the external prophet. The internal prophet is your intellect, okay? That aspect of yourself that could connect to God, okay? And the external prophet is the prophet. You see, so these people, these very good people, are people who are in touch with their prophet, their internal prophet. You see, despite what kind of outward religious denomination they might ascribe to or not ascribe to.
Thank you. I'll read the next question for you. And we have 8 more minutes before you can go to the next one. Why hasn't Allah mentioned all the prophets in the Quran?
Because it is, He does so in potentia. First of all, we have a statement by the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam that says, between Adam and himself, he created 124,000 prophets, right? And what he's doing, he's mentioning to the Arabs who are living in a particular context. Okay, they're living in a Semitic context. They're living in a context where you have 3 religions actually. Yeah, 3 religions besides their own. Okay, and 3 religions that are, all 3 of them are monotheistic. Okay, you have Judaism, you have Christianity, and you have Zoroastrianism. He also mentions, for example, in the Quran, the people of the Sabians, for example, the people who are considered to be people who worship the constellations and so forth. He mentions these. Okay, what he's saying basically is that these religions have divine roots. But many of them have been distorted. Nevertheless, the elements of divine truth in them are still enough for them to be paths towards salvation. And that Islam is brought to correct them or to bring to their notice the truths that they have forgotten or they have left behind. Okay? We could apply this to all other religions, and Muslims have done this, to all other new religions that they have encountered. For example, Hinduism and Buddhism, Shintoism, and so forth and so on. Did God create all of the spirits first and the holy house? Did God create all of the spirits first and the holy household shine the brightest and thus became the 5 holy ones, or were they created first and then the rest of the spirits? They were created first and then the rest of the spirits. Yeah. They are part of the Muhammadan light. The Ahlul Bayt, alayhim salam, are part of the Muhammadan light. And the Muhammadan light, the Nur Muhammadi, is the first thing Allah created of all of existence, and from them all creation came. This is a good one. If a wife of a Christian husband converted to Islam, can she still stay with him? There's debate on this. One position is no, she can't, right? Unless he becomes a Muslim. Even if he becomes a superficial Muslim, even if he says Shahadatain, and you know he doesn't believe in it, it's enough, okay, for her, all right? But if he doesn't, if he refuses and stuff like that, yeah, you got some problems here. You got some serious problems here. The Masumi alayhi salam have the gift of knowing the purity of someone's lineage. If we wish for a pure spouse, how can we know of their purity or for a pure progeny ahead? Can a person have an impure lineage and still become pure? Okay. And then could it be that this is the second question, right? Let me get the first question first. You know about the purity of lineage in a simple sense, which is, who their mother and father are, and what kind of people they are, okay? If they're born of a mother and father anyway, if they know who their father is, for example, this is, purity on a level that we can detect. In terms of purity and, for example, spiritual purity and so forth, we really don't know that. We might know their family might be a religious family, but then, sometimes religious families have their own problems, you know what I mean? So you can't really tell, to tell you the truth. There's a verse in the Holy Quran where it says Allah brings the living from the dead and He brings the dead from the living. And this is interpreted by, for example, Alama Tabatabai to mean the dead from the living means a non-believer from a believing family, right? And the living from the dead means a believer from a non-believing family, like me. I would hate for somebody to say I'm not from a pure background.
Sheikhna, and all the first row Sahaba, the Prophet.
Oh yes, good point. You should come up here. Yeah, he made a very good point. All of the first generation of the Ashab of the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, the majority of them came from kuffar and mushrikeen and people who were enemies of the Prophet and so forth and so on. And nobody will say you need to know who your parents were and stuff like that to be able to marry you. So there you go. Thank you very much. Yeah, I didn't think about that one. Could it be that some of the stories in the Quran are not necessarily literal but metaphorical in the sense that they are told to teach a lesson rather than to tell a literal story that actually happened? I think it's a good question. And for example, I'm sure the person might be thinking about things like, for example, the story of Hazrat Nuh, the story of the Ahl Lut, and so forth and so on. They are both what I would call real and mythological. Okay, what is a myth? Some people use the word, for example, in English, we use the word myth to believe something is unbelievable. That's a myth you're thinking about and so forth. But a myth is something much more profound than that. There's a very essential aspect of a myth. A myth is a story about a reality that existed and occurred on a higher dimension of this world, okay, that is presented as an actuality in this world. For example, the Garden of Eden, okay? This is a myth. Not that it didn't exist. It existed. The question of where becomes something in our mind. But when you look at the story of the garden, you realize that in this garden, you have jinn, you have angels, you have Hazrat Adam, and you have Allah. And and all of them are interacting with each other. All of them are speaking to each other. All of them know of each other. This is not this world. Okay? This is a special state. Okay? It's a special state that cannot be actually described or pointed in this world. Some people say that the Garden of Eden existed between the Tigris and the Euphrates rivers and so on. These are all like speculations. All right? This myth, these myths intersect with this reality. This is very important. They intersect with this reality. So, for example, the people of Lut, there's a geographical area itself that says where it happened. The Dead Sea in the Palestine, Jordan area, and that type of thing. And for example, the grave of Hazrat Habil and so forth, Hazrat Nuh and so forth. We know that these are events that intersected with this world. Okay, but it's something that is much higher than this. Okay.
This is both are one question, and we have one more question after that.
I just want to know if it's okay to use some musical instrument like a guitar and piano playing to play classical music. I guess that's what you meant. Please let me know because I and my kids have activities in the school related to an instrument and would like to participate. Okay, guys, let me tell you something. There are two groups of thinking among Muslim ulama about music, okay? Some say music is haram, others say no. Others say no, but some music is haram and some music is not. I follow the other group, all right? I don't believe music is haram, okay? For a particular logical reason. We say Islam is the deen of the fitrah of insan, the deen of human beings' nature. And the question is, how do you define or how do you distinguish between nature and nurture? Very important. Nurture means tarbiyah, okay? It means conditioning, So, for example, you get what I'm talking about anyway. I don't want to go too far because I'm afraid of the time. I'm watching Doctor over here, So nature and nurture. And one of the ways you determine between nature and nurture is that you look at human society over the course of history. all right, in various different geographical areas or different races and cultures, for example. And you see some commonalities between all of them. For example, all of them have the institution of marriage. So you know human beings naturally want to marry, okay? You see all of them, for example, live in communities. So that's a natural thing for human beings, and so forth and so on. And all of our communities are structured. It's a natural thing in human beings. Or we all, for example, abstract things. We all can think in abstract ways, for example. It's something natural. So the question is, if something is not part of our human nature, it would not exist in one community or another. There might be individuals or groups among those communities that might not do this, but it would not exist in communities. And I ask myself the question, is music a part of our fitra, our human nature, or is it not? And I ask people, I said, I challenge you, show me one society, one culture, one civilization that didn't have music. And when I say music, I mean anything that could make a sound that is rhythmical, and people will say, yes, I can respond to that. Whether it's hitting your chest, hitting a rock, hitting a drum, hitting a chord, or whatever, okay? So this is my understanding. Islam is not against music. This is from what I think, all right? However, we are against certain types of music. And for example, among the ulama, they talk about, for example, musical instruments that might be associated with corruption and so forth and so on. If that instrument is used, yes, it is haram. Or music that is used to, for example, hypnotize you. You know what I mean? You're walking around with your earphones and you're just going like this all the time. It's a hypnotic type of a behavior. Islam is against this. Okay? Islam is about music that would elevate your soul, for example, encourage you to go out and fight for Islam, like rhythmical military music, or could calm your soul and that type of thing. Okay? So this is my attitude about music, and it is also quite subjective. What might be haram for somebody might not be haram for another person, for example. Okay? So I'd advise you, don't listen to Jay-Z, don't listen to Beyonce, don't listen to Rihanna, because all of them are based upon what? Negative music. Okay? Listen to something more elevated than that. All right? Because they are associated with corruption. Okay? And they bring that corruption into your heart. Music is a very dangerous thing, and I think this is why a lot of ulama have just come out across the board and just abandoned all. You see, because one of the best ways of modern society to program their youth is by giving them music. And if these youth are not critical enough, all right, they will be sucked into this type of thing. And because that music comes with dress codes and dress styles and behaviors and so forth and so on, okay? And the next thing you know, you wake up and you're just one of them. So you got to be really careful about music, but I do not think that music is something haram. Yes? About the tool itself, the musical instrument, yes. The guitar. Yes. Uh-huh.
You can play a religious song on the guitar.
Yes.
But originally the guitar, we all know the environment of the guitar.
Yes.
The discos and those kind of places.
Yes.
The ethical part behind it, whenever you play with the guitar, all of your mentality and attention goes to that environment. Yes.
It's true, but you see what happens. We have the condition of in terms of fiqh, right? You have the condition of zaman and makan that is involved. Take for example chess, right? Chess was haram in Islam, okay, and this was based upon the fact that chess was associated with gambling. You see, today chess is not associated with gambling. Chess is associated, in fact, with something completely different, with intellectual prowess, strategy, and that type of thing. People compete with chess to see who's the best chess player, and nobody says that nobody's even gambling on chess players, you see? So now today, people don't associate chess with gambling, and this is why chess now becomes jaiz, Again, another example is, for example, ijtihad, okay? There are many, many hadiths where the imams have condemned ijtihad. See, because ijtihad was something practiced by people who did not follow the imams, and therefore they used their own intellect to sort of arrive at conclusions. But in the absence of the imam now, our ulama have to practice ijtihad based upon their teachings. Ijtihad now is in a different category. I think musical instruments are like that. I am sure there are musical instruments today that are associated with a certain type of negative lifestyle, and that would apply. But things like guitars and drums and pianos and, you know what I mean, even synthesizers, for example, I don't believe that they are haram anymore.
Many questions, but unfortunately the time is pressing, and
I'm enjoying this more than the talk.
So we conclude with the last question from a 6-year-old.
Okay.
Okay. Why did God make us?
God made us. Think about something, right? Think about something that is the most beautiful of the beautiful. Think about something like that, okay? Think about that something being the most kind of the kind, all right? And having the most of everything you could possibly need, but you're not around to enjoy that. Think about that something, and that something says, you know what? I am so beautiful. I am so kind. I have so much to give you. I have so much to show somebody. I just gotta create somebody who could take advantage of that. I just have to create somebody who could say, oh, I so enjoy looking at me, meaning that thing, you know, that I am so lucky to do that. So that's why God created you. God created you to be able to know him, to love him a lot. He created you to have life so you could walk around and you can see and you can enjoy and you can talk. He created food for you to eat. He created a mom and a dad to look after you. He created friends to make you feel happy. You know, he created guys to make movies so you could enjoy. That's Allah. That's why he created you. Allah was so good, so nice, so beautiful, so full of everything, and he created you to enjoy that. And when you die, you will even get more of that than you get in this world. Yeah.
So we have 25 minutes.
25 minutes?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I'll give you a sound.
Okay.
So we probably finish 35 today.
Hmm?
We'll finish around 35.
Okay.
So we have the conclusion of the night.
All right. Yeah. Yeah, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. Tonight I want to talk a little bit about martyrdom. Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says in the Holy Quran, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, وَكَذَّلِكَ جَعَلْنَاكُمْ أُمَّةً وَسَطًا لَتَكُونُوا شُهَدَاءَ عَلَى النَّاسِ. And we have made you a just community that you will be witness over the people, and the messenger will be a witness over you. And the martyr is a supreme witness. That's why we call him a shaheed, or him or her a shaheed. A shaheed is an example of someone who, in word and deed and characteristics, who exposes the truth and makes it available for people to realize. This is what a shaheed is. A person who in their word and deed and their characteristics exposes the truth to you that makes it possible for you to realize it. And in this special circumstance, that includes also their death. The death of a shaheed comes when that truth is expressed to wake people up about tyranny that is existing among them. And that tyrant himself is the one that takes that shaheed's life, because that shaheed is actually doing that exposure of the truth about the true nature of the tyrant and the true nature of their claims. This is what a shaheed is. Now, there are two aspects of a shahada. One aspect of shahada is that external aspect to that external tyrant that is denying you the truth. The other aspect of the shaheed is actually you manifesting the truth to your lower self. You becoming a shaheed to your lower self. You see? And the way you do this is to actually kill your nafs. You kill your nafs. All right? And this killing of your nafs is basically an inward shahada. You know, so your nafs is attached to something. It might be attached to alcohol. It might be attached to whatever it might be, which is something that comes between you and Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Okay? There's your intellect and there's your nafs. Your intellect bears witness to your nafs. It says what you are pursuing is wrong. All right? And so now you decide to ally your will with your intellect and slay your nafs. Okay? And this is where your nafs, when I say slay your nafs, it doesn't mean that it eradicate your nafs. Huh? You can't eradicate your nafs. Okay? Your nafs is important for your survival as a physical entity in this world. But you slay the negative aspect of your nafs. So the Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, in talking to his companions, he says that everybody has a shaitan. They asked him, "Oh, Holy Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, do you have a shaitan?" He says, "Yes, I too have a shaitan, but he became a Muslim." Okay? What is this shaitan? This is your nafs. Okay? Now, it doesn't mean to say you don't have an objective, real spirit, a jinn with you. But that jinn feeds off you. Okay? That jinn feeds off you. That jinn, if you are jinni, if you are nafsi, if you are shahwati, you know, that jinn feeds off you. That jinn talks to you, listen to it. Yeah, okay, yeah, sure, I'll do that. You know, when he talks to you, you don't think you're hearing another voice, huh? Right? When Shaitan whispers to you, it's not that you hear some deep man's voice talking to you. You hear yourself talking to you. You know, if I could do telepathy, and I could speak in your mind, you wouldn't hear my voice, you will hear your voice, because you're used to hearing yourself talk to you, you see? And so when you change that situation in yourself, that jinn cannot get to you. And the less he can get to you is the more he himself will change, okay? So this is what it means by slaying your nafs. And this is what makes you an internal shaheed. Because at the beginning, you're denying yourself. And when you deny yourself, it hurts, it pains. You know, you are accustomed to fame, to fortune, to luxury, you know, to excess or whatever. It hurts a bit. You know, for people who, for example, go on diets, you get the answer. You get where I'm coming from. You know, or people who decide to go to the gym. You know, it's a real battle. You know, with laziness, with just settling back into your normal state of things. You know, that is not good for your health, for example. You know, it takes some effort to keep on fighting this thing and to keep on doing it. And when you end up succeeding, it is when this thing becomes part of you, this new experience becomes part of you. So if people who go to the gym on a regular basis would know, is the day you don't go to the gym on your gym time, you do not feel well. You do not feel happy. You know, you're always fidgeting, you're always unstable because you need to go to the gym. This is now my new thing. You see? You know, or for example, if you have a healthy new diet, okay? In the beginning it's quite difficult. But when you start doing it and when you get into the system of doing it, now it becomes part of you. Now it becomes you and it becomes something easy. And Islam teaches us this. Right? It tells you to be good. To be good in akhlaq, it tells you to be good, to eliminate the negative aspects about yourself. You have to start by doing the opposite or not doing that particular thing until a point is reached where it becomes what we call second nature. That is you, okay? And when it reaches that point, that's when your jinn or your devil becomes an angel. And you know, that internal jihad, right? The Jihad al-Akbar, right? Jihad al-Asghar. Jihad al-Asghar has its shuhada. Jihad al-Akbar also has its shuhada. Okay? That jihad is, for example, reflected in the word zakah. Okay? Zakah meaning something that purifies you. Okay? So, for example, in zakah, what you are doing is eliminating your ego attachment to a particular thing. Zakah is not just about your wealth. Huh? Zakah is not just about your physical wealth or your gold or how much cattle you have or whatever. You know, that too. And why is that? Because it is to separate from you your emotional or ego dependence upon that particular thing. Because as you know, all of us, when we become more wealthy, when we become better off, we become attached to our possessions. And so you have to purify yourself from this attachment. You should be that type of person where if you lose everything, you're still the same. Same as before, same as after. And this is zakah. So imams, for example, talk about zakah in your knowledge. The zakah of knowledge is to teach. Okay? Not to walk around showing off on people how much you know. You know, the zakah of, for example, health is illness. Because in illness, you realize the limitations of your health. That one day probably it would come when you would not be as healthy and young and strong as you can be. You know, the zakah of, for example, strength is helping other people and so forth and so on. Everything has a zakah. You know, so we should look at those things that we are attached to and said, how can I pay zakah on this? If that thing is something halal for us. Okay? Because a halal thing could become haram for us. Primarily because of our attachment to it. Take, for example, food. Okay? Food is halal for us. Okay? Halal food is halal for us. But we could become gluttons, or we could become people who overeat, or we could become people who eat and don't exercise. And so therefore, it becomes dangerous for us. It becomes harmful for us. And so we have to fight a jihad against this. You see? One of the problems that, for example, in a lot of Muslim communities is they don't fight jihad against their own dietary behavior. They don't. Okay? And so you have a whole lot of obese people walking around thinking, well, hey, I'm not disobeying God. Come on. Okay, you're attached to your food. Right? You're attached to your food. So one day you have to say to yourself, okay, food, I'm going to put you aside. I'll try not to be attached to you. I'm going to eat less than I normally eat, for example. It's going to be painful. It's going to be hard. This is where you get shahada on the inside. Yeah? Or for example, you know, attachment to TV or attachment to video games, whatever it might be that you are attached to. When you say to yourself, oh, I spent all my time doing this. I don't spend much time praying. Or when I'm praying, I'm so anxious to finish my prayer so I can get back to my video game. Okay? You know, your video game is your enemy here now. All right? And this is why Quran, for example, talks about a man's wife and his children being their enemies. They're not their enemies in their nature. They could be enemies to his relationship with them. Right? His relationship with them could be one that he puts them before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And that is why they become their enemy. And when you put them before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, they themselves change. They themselves take the role of Allah. Human beings are like this. Okay? If somebody comes up to me and starts worshiping me, and I'm not a person who is self-aware, the next thing that happens is that I expect them to worship me. I expect them to bow down to me. Because this is my right. This is what you've been doing all the time. How you treat people many times leads to a type of a reaction by people where they expect you to be that which you are treating them in accordance with. So martyrdom or shahada is also an aspect of your life. It's also an aspect of your life. You know, and one of the measures of it, just like the outward shahada, one of the measures of it is the extent to which it gets between you and your Lord. Okay? So keep this in mind. Now you have, again, so the shaheed in the internal sense, the shaheed of the jihad al-akbar is greater than the shaheed of the jihad al-asghar because it's a bigger war. All right? And those who have carried out that internal shahada are better at the outward jihad al-asghar than those who have not. You see? And so, for example, you have people who do jihad al-asghar, you know, people who might be thugs. You know, I've heard a lot about this, like, for example, during the Iran-Iraq war. You know, I had guys who were thugs. You know, they didn't pray, they didn't fast, they used to drink, and they used to be, you know, roughnecks and so forth, but they decided to go onto the war and put themselves on the line to fight. You see, and they gave their lives. These guys became shaheed. You know, also you did have, you know, Tulab, who went to fight. Tulab, right? And they were more scared than those roughnecks. So what we see, not all of them, I'm not saying all of them, you had these kinds of examples, right? The religious guy being more afraid of the enemy, right, than the other guy. What does it mean? That religious guy did not confront his own inner weaknesses, all right? He was religious on the outside, right? He was wearing turban and stuff like that, you see? But there was a reality to him on the inside that was not achieved. Then you had very religious people, again, who went to the battlefield and became shaheed. Their level would have been higher than the thugs, but the thugs definitely had some higher level. Then you have, for example, statements like the ink of the scholar, right, is greater than the blood of the martyr. Is greater than the blood of the martyr in the sense that the martyrs do what? What do the martyrs do? The martyrs, by their shahada, bear witness to the truth of the forces that they are fighting against. That those forces that they are fighting against, whether inwardly or outwardly, are negative forces that masquerade as truth. And therefore, when the scholar writes, first of all, where is this writing coming from? It's coming from an intellect that is purified, an intellect that is subtle. An Islamic scholar, a true Islamic scholar, doesn't write out of just their wahm. Okay? That writing bears witness for people that guides them to the truth. Okay? And this is why, for example, the ink of the scholar is greater than the blood of the martyr, because the ink of the scholar can guide more people, okay, than the actual life of the martyr. So the martyr destroys his ego, destroys his physical body in the fire of his death to cast a light for others to see. The martyr has no shroud. The martyr has no shroud. He doesn't need to give account on the day of judgment. He does not require ghusl. And it is because that martyr is purified by destroying his nafs and outward attachments, and attaches himself to the transcendental truth, which is Allah. And therefore that martyr does not require any kind of purifying process, outward purifying process. The very blood itself, the very clothing of that martyr is something that is purified by that martyr's death. So I think we out of time now. Yeah? 5 more minutes, yeah. Okay. The English word for martyr is a very interesting word, right? Because the word martyr goes back to, I think, the original, the Greek word, okay, which actually means to bear witness. Okay? So there's a very close relationship here. When in the Christian terminology, for example, let's say a martyr, they mean a martyr for Christ, for Jesus Christ, okay, which they consider to be the Son of God. You know, when we say we are martyrs to the absolute truth, which is Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, with respect to the reality in which we see and the denial of those forces that are arrayed against us. That was my little two cents worth where martyrdom was concerned. Yeah, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. I was very pleased. I'm always pleased to come to visit you guys here in Kuwait. You know, it's quite hot for me actually.